And you guys can press join later.
Okay.
And this is all for New Ways Consulting.
Do we have to join now or later?
Join later, please. Oh. And I believe Cynthia and Andrew are in the breakout room. I believe they pressed join by mistake, or I moved them by mistake. So I will just close the rooms. So in the meantime, can one of you please share your screen for your presentation?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Sure. And whenever you're ready, I'll press start once the first person starts speaking. Good luck.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank you so much for being here today and listen to our presentation. I want to start this presentation off with introducing our team. Lucas, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
We are New Ways Consulting. Esther and Ilsa are the engineering students. Me and Lucas are my name is Lisa. We are the business students. Lucas, can you go to the next slide, please? The problem statement. In the problem statement of the Accenture case, the biggest problem was the fare gates. They do not work properly. The next problem is that the current data collection is being stored on an SD card, which didn't really go so well. In connection to the fare gates, also the other readers do not work. Because of all of the problems previously stated, the customers and the employees weren't so happy about using the a la cartes. Lucas, can you go to the next slide, please? The solution. In 2021, the project starts. By 2023, the card system is fully working with no flaws in the system, and paying with cash disappears completely. In 2025, the new GPS system, Track and Go, is introduced. Ilse will tell you all about this in a few minutes. And in 2030, the whole card system disappears and only the Track and Go system is being used. Now I want to give the word to Esther.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. So for the short-term solution, it is a bit too rash to just change to a whole new system if only the cards have just been implemented only a year ago. So for the first problems in the first term, they still need to change from cash, paying money and using tokens to using the cards. Since there's a couple of problems with the hardware, we think a third party would be a great solution if they would help and place working products. Also with the software, a third party might be better because Eller is doing everything on itself now. And this is the biggest project they had until now. So maybe if they use a system that has already proven to work, maybe in another country or in another city or in another system, they could really improve that. Also, by placing more products, for instance, the things you can take money and put it on your card. Sorry?
Check-in station.
No, not the checking in, where you can put the money on your traveling card. You can make more of those. Like you said, the check-in stations. If you have more of those, then people won't be as sad if they can't find any. And if it's broken, there is always another one around the corner. So in that way, there's more systems, so people can really use the systems. Then also there is this storage problem. There are SD cards in the fare gates at this moment. So a different way of doing this is when your card checks in, then the system makes a connection with the card, and that is stored in the storage unit. But instead of doing that, you can also do that every 15 minutes, the information is sent to MTC and they collect everything. And then every 12 hours, all that information is being sent to Eller. So they can process that and make sure the money goes to MTC every 24 hours. That way, if one of the poles is broken, that is no problem, all the information is stored. Also, if an SD card is changing because there's not enough storage on there, that's not a problem because it's all on this gigantic server and it's all being collected. So next slide, please. Also, like Liza said, there's a problem with people. So for the users, it is too big a problem to go to another one of those products to load their money or to check in. So another way of doing that is not only by placing more of those products, but also by changing the card system. So for instance, you could use your phone to check in, or even your credit or debit cards. So you don't have to load the money on your card, it just goes off automatically. Also by using an app, you can see where working products are and use that. Also, the current situation, they already have a system where people can find the traveling information, so that can be added. And for the employees that don't really understand it, they should have lessons, maybe in class or videos, where everything is explained so that they can give the right information to the customers. So now for the long-term solutions, I want to give the word to Ilse.
Yes, thank you, Esther. So as Lisa said, the long-term solution will be introduced in 2025. This long-term solution will solve or lessen some pains you see here, such as charging your Metro card, broken check-in stations or system failures, delays when traveling, also littering, and crowded spaces, especially now with COVID. Then our solution, Track and Go. Track and Go is a system made to make traveling easier, accessible, and more efficient. So the Track and Go system will work with the current app. In a Track and Go system, you will have a map where you can see your live location, your schedule, also your destinations, and it's all live. It's all done via a Wi-Fi connection, which makes it possible to change your schedule when there are delays. So you do not have to cancel your entire travel schedule. You can just, it adapts automatically. Besides that, we would like to introduce a more social aspect to traveling, so that you can see in your app different location by different spots and colors. For instance, if someone is having some food or drinks, and they can share a picture or a story. Besides that, when traveling, you are also on locations which are not familiar. And we would like to also make it possible for people to see when they're on location, they can see on the app, okay, here are some facilities, for instance, the bathroom. Next slide, please. Then the customer journey. As I said, the Track and Go system is based entirely on Wi-Fi connection, or a connection to a network. When you enter a location, you just have your phone with your app, which is connected to the Wi-Fi. And then on the locations and on the transports, there is also a Wi-Fi hotspot. So it can see if you enter a moving vehicle at a location, it can track you and also see how fast you go, so that if you exit that vehicle on a second location, it will register that in the app and also charge. As you can see, maybe you have to walk between two locations instead of taking transport. This will not be charged because it's all registered. Your traveling time is all registered, so it can see, okay, you're moving at a few kilometers per hour instead of 30 or 60. So this system makes it easy to track and easy to travel. Next slide, please. Some other features we would like to introduce into the app is you see on the left, is a personal profile where you can save your traveling plans, which will also be updated when traveling. Besides that, you can have an invoice where you can see all your travel plans, and you can also share your information. So for instance, when a business gives you your money back for the travel time when you have to go to work, you can send this, you can select those travel times, put it in a PDF and send it to your boss, making it even easier. Besides that, there's a communication function where you can, for instance, share if there's littering on public transport. So because it's all live, it's all with a location, you can take a picture of the litter, send a message for instance, there's a spill on this station. It may be slippery, may be dangerous. You can send it, and someone can be sent to clean it up. Besides that, you can also see where crowded spaces are, so that you can avoid and maybe adjust your traveling schedule. And at last, because it's all done via Wi-Fi without checking in physically, you do not have to use the fare gates, which reduces the pain of having a default or error. Yes, and on the next slide, Lucas will tell you something about the repercussions.
Yeah, thank you. So what are some of the repercussions if the previously mentioned issues are not fixed? So one of the big ones is going to be that there will be less interest in a switch to Aller. So instead of the traditional system with tokens and just paying when you get inside of the bus or metro, then people are going to prefer that instead of the broken system. Another consequence might be that inconsistent info is provided to the customers. So one of the things which was stated in the case was that the employees are not aware of exactly how it works. So when a customer has a question, then they cannot help them. This just makes it even more unclear to customers. And then finally, if it is not properly fixed, so if the gates do not work or if the checking in stations don't work, then this might just lead to people deciding then, okay, I'm not going to pay. And then you'll have a bunch of undeclared travelers. So all these things will eventually lead to missed revenues. So I'm going to go over some of the figures which we projected. So to do this, we obviously had to make some assumptions since we don't have all the information. So one of the assumptions we made that was that if one of the check-in station devices is broken, then 25% of the customers won't bother seeking a working device and will just sit down and they'll just be like, okay, it's not my problem, so I'll just travel for free. Then if one of the fare gates is broken, I made the assumption that about 5% of the people will decide that if I can't even get into the train station, then I'm going to find another way to travel. So maybe a car or a taxi. So with these assumptions in mind, I made a revenue of the year 2020. So this was the first year that we had the Aller system. So just a couple of things. I'll just let you guys look at it for a second. But at the top we have, I had to put it below each other, otherwise it's too long. So I divided up into 4 quarters. The top one just says the amount of users every, at least every ride, how many rides every month. Then if everything works, then we have the revenue without the assumptions. And if the assumptions are true, then we have the revenue with assumptions. And at the bottom, you can see the difference. So this is the loss. So if everything worked well, they would make 10.8 million in January. And since things don't work well, which we know, they only make 10.5 million. So they lose 300,000. And then at the end, I have some totals. So I'll just give you guys a couple seconds, just have a look through, and then I'll go to the next slide. As you can see, the total for year 2020 is quite high. So it's almost $4 million just from that first year when, yeah. So now I'll go on to the final slide, and this is a projection for the coming 5 years. I added the 2021 here in as a benchmark as well. So the green again is without the assumption. So if everything worked well, and the darker orange-ish color is how it is now, so without things working properly. There are a couple of formulas in here. As one of the assumptions was that less people are going to want to use the product if it remains broken. You can also see that the amounts increase per year. People who use Aller, in the system that works well, it goes quite fast, eventually ending at 80%. And in the one with all the defects, it's significantly slower, ending at only 45%. And then with the total revenues at the end, at the bottom again. So for the final minute, I'll just let you guys have a look at this. But one of the things I want to point out is that you can see a huge difference in total revenue after 5 years in the case that it doesn't work. So it's a difference of more than 1 billion Canadian dollars. So this actually is the last slide, and this concludes our presentation. I'll leave it on this slide if you guys want to have another look at it. But we want to thank you guys for your attention, and we are open to hear any questions you might have.
Thank you, New Ways Consulting. So I'm just going to stop the time, and you guys have a 15-minute Q&A period. So I'll start the time whenever one of the judges starts asking a question.
Thank you. So thank you, New Ways Consulting, for your presentation and your insights. Of all the issues that is currently facing MTC and Ali, what are the top 3 issues, and which of those does your solution aim to tackle?
Okay, Esther, go ahead.
Okay. So first of all is the technical problems they have with their hardware and software. Second of all, they miss revenue because customers do not want to use their product, and also their the employees of the MTC do not know how it works, so they don't really know how to work with it. So we targeted the technical part, the products part, the most with our GPS system, the track and go system, because we feel like by solving that, we can also solve people wanting to use the system, and if we make it easy and also give the employees lessons about how it works and make it as ergonomic as it can be, so it is easy to understand, then that also is solved. Then those people can also give the right information to the customers, and as a result, more revenue.
Understood. I'll pass it along to one of the other judges.
Thank you.
Who are on mute.
I no longer on mute. Good presentation, guys. I think in reviewing the financials, it seems that you have a good grasp on what the risk is if they don't remedy this problem. What I didn't hear, and I wonder whether you could elaborate on, would be what are the costs of your proposed solution, which I gather is an application run through Wi-Fi with big data collection, and that's how you'll collect the fares, which seems it might replace the existing system, or at least complement the existing system. So perhaps you could, we can see that, okay, maybe there's $1 trillion on the line, which even in Canadian dollars is a lot of capital. So, how does the cost benefit analysis work when we look at the solution you're proposing?
I guess I'll be the one answering the question. We didn't have any numbers for how much it cost to do the actual improvements. But as you can probably see from the design, it's going to be most of it will be software development. Also, just research and development, just figuring out how to make the app work, doing some testing. Most of it is in the app, so there's not a lot of physical costs which have to be associated with it. Eventually, though, as the timeline showed, eventually we will have to get rid of the checking in stations and stuff. but I think that's only a little bit of the cost. Most of it will be in the development of the app. I don't know if someone of my team wants to add something more to this.
Yeah, so there is already a app. So we thought it could be an add-on. There's already an app existing. Some features have to be introduced, but that technology is already there. For instance, Google Maps is already an existing software, so it's nothing new. So it should not take a lot of time. However, we think this is a solution on the long term. So, for instance, those checking stations, if they break down, someone has to get to look at it, someone has to go there, fix it. And especially when it's on a bus, it's mostly on the end of a ride or a route. So it also takes a lot of time. And it's also a pain for the customer. So we think on the long term, you will save a lot of money by introducing this system, which does not require those checking poles. Does that answer?
I agree. It seems like an excellent solution. I'm just curious as to the kind of payoff economics, but thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, so like the other judge just said, it's a really great presentation, and your solution, I really liked it personally. I do agree that I would have liked to hear more about the costs associated with your solution, based off of you could just throw estimates. A question I had though, just to clarify, and then I'll give a follow-up. You want to get rid of the physical check-ins, like you want it to be all through phones? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so something that comes to mind when you say that is that public transportation, not everyone who uses public transportation always has access to phones. So some people are a little bit of, they have a lower income, and these kinds of apps, typically they also have to be on more up-to-date phones. So don't you think that might sort of get in the way for let's say, people from the homeless population who need it to get around, or even someone whose phone runs out of batteries? What would happen then if you're getting rid of the physical stations?
So the card system, as you see on the timeline here, the card system is more as a transition period, because of course this is a huge change, which is difficult for people, but we would like to keep the card system also for the homeless, which does not require a app if needed. It's just a plastic card which can be recharged on stations. And ultimately, if needed, this will also be keep in place, but we would like to mostly use this as a transition period to reduce the amount of cash flow and to go to the GPS system. But of course, this could still be in place. And if needed, for instance, a station needs more security, so the checking stations like the gates, if they have to stay there, we also thought of how the Track and Go app, it can scan, like through, if you go through the app, it locates your device and also your like your GPS number, and it can connect to your app and just get you through. So there's always a possibility to keep the card system, but the card system is mainly to really get rid of the manual payments on, for instance, a bus.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it doesn't really have to go entirely, but that's the goal, to really reduce it to mostly the Track and Go system.
So I have a follow-up question that builds on Cynthia's question. In general, how do you propose mitigating the current loss in revenue that is occurring with the existing system until such a moment in time where the new system is introduced? Because the new system is introduced in 5 years. That means for the next 4 years, the company, if they do not address the root causes, will continue to lose, I don't remember, what was it, a million, I think $1 million a year, if not more. So what is the proposed mitigation plan? Because that mitigation plan would no doubt also address the issue that Cynthia was raising, that this card solution needs to remain for the foreseeable future for at least a small portion of MTC users.
Yeah, so that's where
Billion.
I thought I did. Yeah. Well, so that's where the short-term solution really comes in, because that is where the current problems are being fixed by maybe putting more products there, like I explained, so people can find other products to check in or to put money on their cards. And by really fixing that and including the third party, the products, the reliability of products can be better. And does that answer your question? Is that the direction you were going?
Can I maybe add? I don't think we can name the country we're from, but in Europe, this card system has been here for years and it's totally normalized. So we know it's possible. We know that you can have a good running system. So we really think if they find a company in the Netherlands which would like to help them, maybe exchange, maybe they're not really competitors because they're in a total different area of the world, of course. I think this exchange could be very valuable for both parties and just profit of the existing system because the technology is already there. It just people just have to get connected to the different companies.
Agreed. I guess what I'm looking for is for the next 2 years, what would be the one short-term solution that you guys propose that would allow to mitigate the losses until such a moment where the longer-term GPS solutions rolled out? You had to pick one thing in your solution. What would you propose in the near term to stem some of those losses?
Well, I think it's also important. Maybe I didn't make it very clear through this projection, but it's not the case. As you can see, it's in the green one, for example, it says the percentage of MTC users who use other is 10%. So on this 10%, we calculated the daily ridership. So it's 36.6 million for 2020 out of the 366 million. So the other 90% who do not use others. So they will still be receiving revenues through the traditional systems. But this was just purely made for the new system.
Completely understood, but I'm talking about the 4 million. In the short-term solution that you propose, does any of it aim to reduce the 4 million loss that's currently in 2020 going forward?
Yeah, by implementing the solutions we have, we aim that more people will use it. So as a result, instead of less people using it, more people will use it and there's more revenue.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, so mainly communication and marketing, I think so.
Thank you. No further questions on my end. Andrew and Cynthia, it's all you.
Sure, I might switch gears back to the bigger picture, longer term solution, which I think is a really interesting idea and quite possibly will be something we'll see in the future. But why wouldn't we see it? What are the risks, whether it's public perception or cybersecurity? What are the greatest risks to your long-term solution? Do you have any remedial action plan against those risks? And yeah, maybe you could just elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I think one of the issues, especially now, is privacy. People are thinking more about the privacy, but also taking information into account and thinking, well, really, is this something which is true? So the whole privacy policy will, of course, when someone uses the app, they can choose if to activate their location on all times when using the app or on not using the app. So the app will make it possible for people to select it when only using the app. So the app can see, okay, you're traveling, you're leaving right now. When you schedule your traveling plan, you save it and it sees, okay, you have to leave in 5 minutes. We will activate it and it will see, okay, you're traveling 60 miles an hour and it will stop. So that will be a solution to solve the privacy problems when someone does not want to be tracked the entire day, for instance, but also just to be open as a company. There should really be open sources, but also cybersecurity on the information. It should be stored properly, not be sold to external parties because that brings doubt to the customer. So I think privacy and the whole tracking system will be one of the flaws on this system, but can be addressed. And I think with open communication can be solved. Does that answer your question?
It does. I don't know if it's going to answer the question to all members of our highly skeptical public. Exists in Europe and North America and everywhere else. But yeah, I think it's the right idea.
Yeah, there are some ways to lessen the pain, but there are already apps using your location, such as Google Maps. So I think people are already used to it. But of course, there are also always skeptics, and this will also depend on the country and maybe also the target group. But it is a way to lessen. But I think if you introduce this system over the years, these worries as a person will lessen when it gets more common and they're more used to it.
I agree. Good job, guys. It was a pleasure hearing your presentation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
I
you.
agree. Just out of curiosity, what kind of engineering students do you have in your team?
2 industrial product designers.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you.
Very good to know. Thank you. It was a really great job, guys.
All right, thank you, New Ways Consulting. So if you don't mind, we'll just all break off into our own respective breakout rooms. And once everyone is in there, I will start the timer for a 10-minute deliberation period between the judges. I, unfortunately, because I'm host and timekeeper, I'll have to stay in here to keep the YouTube live stream up. So when I'll broadcast a message when there's 1 minute left, and then I'll close the breakout rooms when it's time to come back.
Yes.
Thank you.
I lost my breakout room.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I also lost a break. Yeah.
Let
we
me
have it here.
1 second. I'll just move everyone back.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm joining. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait until the judges come back. Hi, judges. So we're going to have a 10-minute feedback session. So I'll start the timer whenever you guys are ready.
Hi, so I'll start first. First of all, great presentation. I think your visuals were really good at communicating what you were trying to say. Just some notes on my end would be a little bit more focused on the analysis that goes into your solution. The solution itself was great, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more analysis in terms of the implementation plan, and the risks associated with them, how you would approach those risks, and a little bit more, I guess, a big picture of what comes with your solution. But outside of that, you guys did a really great job with the time that you had.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think you guys all did a good job speaking, and it had a natural flow to it, which is good. I think what I would work on in the future would be integrating the various parts of the presentation with each other. So, the finances came at the end, and as we mentioned kind of in our questions, well, we would have liked to understand better the financial impacts of the solution, and also so financial impacts of the solution, and then we could also say the costs of the solution. So really a cost benefit analysis, and what alternatives might have been and what the downside or upside of those economically might have been. So that'd be my comment, would be make sure you're integrating the various aspects of things when creating the presentation, and when giving the presentation, even if that's just in transitioning between the slides, transitioning between each other's parts. You can give a little teaser like, hey, this is, going to mitigate $700 million of lost revenue. We're going to cover that later, so that we have an idea of context.
Mhm.
That would be my comment.
Okay, thank you.
To build on that, actually, one of the reasons why we believe that integration could be an area of focus is the problem identification happened at many moments in the presentation. You had a problem statement, then Esther, in your section, you gave us quite a bit of review of the problems, which then showed up again later on in the long-term solution. So the fact that there was covering the same ground several times led us to believe that in the assembly of the presentation, there was it wasn't as integrated as it could have been. My feedback would revolve around the problem statement itself. Even if you don't present it to your end users, when working on a case together, my recommendation would be that you, when faced like a case like this with multiple issues, make sure to write them all down and to rank them. And similarly once you've come across your solution, tie your solution, identify in a little table how your solution ties back to which issue, right? That allows you then to make sure that you've really linked both the business or engineering solution to the actual problem. And in doing that, will clarify your thinking, making the implementation phase and implementation explanation that Cynthia was talking about easier to communicate, because you'll have done that quick sanity check on your end. And it also at that moment makes it easier to tie in the engineering and business parts of things. So that little check-in halfway through your work together can really help pull things together. And then from a more, I guess, housekeeping perspective, we liked your presentation and visuals very much. They would have been even better if you included a bit more text, because a lot of the content, you guys, we had to listen very hard because what you were saying had a lot of value, right? And while you hope that everyone's going to listen to you, make our jobs a little bit easier by just putting 1 or 2 bullet points so that if for whatever reason we get frazzled, take a power nap in the middle of your presentation, when we open our eyes, it's there, right? In case we forget. So not too much. You don't want heavy slides. We like that your slides were light, but find a little bit of balance between the graphics that were very informative and helped us pay attention with having just a little bit of text. And if you do that, that way you cover both bases, because some people aren't as auditory, whatever. Some people are more visual than listening, so you want to make sure that you cover everyone in your audience that way. But otherwise, that was it. It was good.
And just once more on a more positive note, something that we really liked was your sustainability solution. So we know that it's kind of hard to bring sustainability and ethics into this kind of I guess case, but it was very creative the way you tackled it with having some sort of way to show littering, or like I thought it was a very creative move.
And I was definitely happy to see that you guys identified that one of the core issues was training employees, because that is true. Any solution, no matter how tech savvy it is, if the employees are not empowered to properly execute it, it will fail. So that was something that you guys mentioned several times and flagged. I was happy to see that, because that definitely shows an understanding of what it takes to execute.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd add that we really also all liked the bigger picture solution, the longer term solution. I think that's an interesting, leap to be like, well, we could fix what we already have, but if in 10 years that's going to be obsolete already, why not just go there? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good instinct to solve business issues from a grassroots level, if you will, or like using the best possible technology, thinking practically, because it's like there was like a lost cost. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my business speak.
Opportunity cost.
Well, there's the opportunity cost. There's also the sunk cost.
Sunk cost.
Yeah. Be careful, kids. You're going to forget what you learned in school. There's a sunk cost of this system that they've installed so far. It's not working properly. So you could pump more money into it, or you could move on your next age solution. So that's an interesting instinct. It's a good instinct, and it's a tough case, really tough case. It must have been very challenging to work on it via Zoom with each other as well. So yeah, good job. And we wish we could have had you over from Europe to Canada.
Without knowing where you're from.
Yeah.
Having had Andrew build you guys up, I'm going to bring you back down with further feedback.
Oh.
Which is the instinct, which I agree, his instinct that he mentioned, right? Thinking longer term, and instead of, pumping money into an existing problem, let's just reimagine and try to eliminate the problem entirely. Agreed. That is a very good instinct. Continue to have it. However, if you go down that path in solutions, make sure to have in parallel at least some sort of path to mitigate the existing situation until such a moment when you can launch it, right? Because otherwise you're asking the business to say, yeah, those 3 or 4 million of loss every single year, just deal with it until we have a final solution, and the final solution's in 4 years. So suck it up, right? Like, you don't imagine going to a CFO and CEO and be like, that's as good as it's going to get. But one day we're going to fix it, right? You need to have that temporary solution, maybe not completely address it. You don't want to pump in a ton of money into something that you're going to get rid of in 3 to 5 years because you're addressing the root cause. But you at least have to make sure to do something to contain the current situation until you can roll out the real solution. So from a real world dynamics, right? Continue pursuing this instinct, but also make sure that in the meantime, right, you're gonna have the finance people crying because you're asking them to stick with the loss. Yes, I'm done talking, okay.
Thank you so much for your feedback. It's very valuable for us.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you so much, New Ways Consulting. So, yeah, have a good evening, night, day, wherever you're from. So, and we'll see you tomorrow for the next case. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You too.
You.
Cheers.
So, judges, I just wanted to ask if every Hey guys, so just a friendly reminder, if you can all just change your names on Zoom to your team name, first name and last name. And let me see, Greg, Tom. Cool. So I will just let the judges come back in. So before the judges get here, just quickly, so welcome to the presentations again. As yesterday, it's going to be 15 minutes of presentations, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. Then after that, we'll break off into separate breakout rooms and the judges will deliberate for 10 minutes. And then after that, we'll all come back to the main room and then the judges will give feedback for 10 minutes. So is this all visible to everybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have countdown placards from when you have 10 minutes remaining, 5 minutes remaining, 1 minute remaining, and 0 minutes when your time is up. So just before we begin, I will just open all breakout rooms again and assign Volt Consulting to your breakout room. You'll get a prompt if you can just say not now. Awesome. So to begin the presentations, one of you guys can share your screens. Is everyone ready?
Yeah, good to go.
All right, so your time begins. I'll press start whenever you guys start talking. Good luck.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of myself, Colton, my colleagues Greg, Fat, and Tom, you got a little bit of an image down there to see who we are. This is our presentation on a solution for the Accenture and the Montreal Transit system. So first off, I want you to meet Ryan and Sarah. Ryan is a transit operator, and Sarah, she's a daily commuter. Ryan feels that he's an advocate for the new technology that's being put into the systems, but he feels constantly battled by opposing viewpoints when the machines continue to fail. Sarah, on the other hand, a user of the Aller card, and is often left feeling angry when the machines are out of service, leaving her to question, why do I even use this? So both are hesitant to continue supporting the Aller technology unless serious improvements can be made. This is how we derived our problem statement. Montreal Transit Commission is experiencing a decrease in fare payments and customer satisfaction with the adoption of the Aller technology. Our executive summary, an opportunity to move Aller card to be completely digital. Here we will work on 3 criteria: system efficiency, improve customer satisfaction, and improve MTS financial position. we have chosen to move forward with a solution to improve the MTS app by integrating the Aller card to the mobile and utilizing NFC function for payment. I did a little bit of a SOAR analysis here, but I'm only going to be focusing on two of the aspects: aspirations and results. You can see here that Aller system in place has the opportunity to actually remove physical currency altogether, and therefore kind of increasing health and safety. There is an opportunity to utilize location-based data to be used for transit improvements and increase percentage of paying customers up to 98%. For results, we see this will result in reduction in physical currencies, reduces potential of theft. Location-based data will be used to improve transit routes, and by increasing percentage of paying customers, MTS will increase economic position. This critical insight for this is that advancements in the Aller system will subsequently help improve the transit system. Business operation issues. We've come up with two issues. The first is economic issue. There is a decreased percentage of payments due to malfunctioning readers, and improvements to technology are expensive. The repercussions of this: decreased revenue if customers choose not to pay, and numerous expensive improvements needed to be done to improve overall efficiency. The second, consumer issues. Consumers losing trust in the new system, and then subsequently negative word of mouth. Repercussions of this: consumers may choose alternative transit options or choose not to pay altogether, and consumers can spread negative experiences to their network, which may influence negative growth opportunities. Just a little bit of financials. To begin with, between 2016 and 2020, there was over $47 million in loss of revenue. This is described on the graph on the left. And then projected financial losses between 2021 and 2025 are over $225 million if implementation of a solution is not put in.
So the current technical issue that we are looking at are dealing with the software, which account for 10% of the problem. And the Aller code has bugs and has been proven to be inefficient. The hardware, in that the card reader had malfunctioned before, which account for 30% of the problem. And lastly is the network, which account for 60% of the problem, in that the network connection are not consistent and fast enough, and it's also lack ability to assign IP address.
So currently right now, in terms of public transportation, there's 4 main digital trends, and our solution is going to touch base on each of these a little bit. We have the use of smart devices like your phone, the use of data analytics to perfectly analyze every single bit of data within public transportation. AI, which is beginning to be implemented, and also a lot of mobility as well.
So here comes our solution, is to use NFC technology to improve the efficiency, the convenience of riding transit. So what we're going to do is we're going to using NFC technology to tap and pay for the transit rides. Also, we're going to develop a backup payment method, which is using QR code in case the NFC technology is broken down. And we'll also improve the existing mobile app by adding more user interface. So why are we using NFC technology? Because NFC has been proven to be secure and reliable as a payment options, and it has and the transaction using NFC technology is also really fast, less than 1 second. And the app that we are going to improve is going to allow the user to track buses and report card if the card are stolen. The resources that required for these solutions are NFC tags, NFC reader devices, and software developers. So here's a process of how the NFC chip is integrated in our solution. So as you can see, NFC chip is going to be integrated into the smart card and also into the reader device. And in case your smartphone already have NFC chip within it, you can add your the smart card into your phone, just like a debit or credit card in Google Pay or Apple Wallet, and you don't need to use a physical card to ride a transit anymore. So this is just a summary of the process in the last slide. So we're gonna install the NFC chip into the other smart card and also at every card reader on the bus and at every train station. And if your phone already have NFC chip within it, you can integrate the other smart card to the Apple Wallet or the Google Pay and use that to ride a transit without the assistance of physical card. And in addition, we also improved the other mobile app by adding QR code scanning option, the feature to report and lock your card if they are stolen, and tracking bus and train the arrival time of bus and trains and their route. By doing this, we improve the process in efficiency, reliability, and convenience, and therefore bring the satisfaction to our customer. The estimated time to finish this phase of the project is to be 3 months. So in conclusion, integrated NFC technology performs transit passes transaction in an efficient, safe, and reliable manner.
For the network improvement, we will look to upgrade connection and resolve the IP issues. The reason for this is because the network connection has been proven to be an ongoing intermittent issue that we are dealing with. Better connectivity would also help us in avoid delay in payment transactions. The resources that we will need for this are network technicians and higher speed internet connection. So how are we going to implement this is that we will invest money to upgrade the connection speed, as well as hiring more network technicians to fix the IP issues. This would give us our key performance indicator in that we ensure the connection is fast and stable. We will improve our customer satisfaction and improve the whole payment transaction efficiency. We expect this process to take about 3 months.
So just to give you a financial breakdown of our projects, product 1, the NFC app integration, with a labor cost of 95,000 and product cost of 472, combined total of 567,000. And project 2, network improvement, a labor cost and product cost of 1.6 million both, to conclude 3.2 million overall. Without implementation, we're expected to have a loss of 225 million in revenue by 2025. With implementation, reduction loss will be from non-payments up to 97%. This will result in an increase of $218 million in extra revenue or unexpected revenue by 2025.
So how is this problem solved by what we have implemented? It comes down to 3 main criteria. The software, what we're implementing, has fewer bugs and a better user experience overall. The hardware, in terms of the chips and the QR code, they're very easy to replace, and there's a lot of backup options with the QR code. And the network has improved connection speed, so you won't have any connectivity issues which were cited previously. What is our long-term recommendation, though, for this problem? So the long-term recommendation that we want to propose today is to use location-based data to quantify the highly used routes. And this will all be based off of consumer data. The reason why we're doing this is to improve the overall transportation system by adding and removing routes based on where customers are actually going. That way you aren't having any inefficient transportation methods. And we'll be using this through the MTC app. So our other prong of the implementation is the offline payment transaction machine. The reason we do this is to avoid delay due to a connection issue. So that's no longer, connectivity will no longer plague us at all. And we use app developers to develop this. The timeline for this implementation is illustrated right here. In terms of each of these aspects, whether it's the NFC app or the network improvement, Both can be done within a matter of months. The easiest parts, the quickest parts are to improve the app itself and to integrate the QR system, as well as improving the connection and improving the connection speed. That could happen within the first month. Taking a little bit longer in terms of 3 months would be actually putting the NFC chips into the phones, and then afterwards hiring the actual technicians to make sure that there aren't any IP issues anymore. And the risks and mitigations for this one. One risk is that people don't want to tap their phone to a high touch area because of health issues, obviously. So how do we mitigate this? The read range is actually around 4 centimeters when it comes to tapping this, similar to when you're using mobile pay at a cashier. So there actually isn't any physical contact with this one. The other one that could be an issue is stolen cards. And we believe that the card is locked and then that transaction money can be returned to the actual user. So we don't feel that there's actually a high risk of having any funds stolen off each card. So
this brings our presentation to the most important question, which is how will our solution impact Ryan and Sarah? Ryan, who is a transit operator, is now excited to work in a more efficient system. Sarah, on the other hand, who is a daily commuter, is now get to enjoy a stress-free daily life environment. Both are now happy with our new payment system because it works more efficiently, which hugely reduces their stress. That brings us to our executive summary, and that our solution is to integrate the NFC function and upgrade the app that currently have by MTS. Our solution will provide a reliable payment transaction and improve the overall transit system. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We are happy to answer any question that you have.
All right, thank you, Volt Consulting. So the Q&A period will begin. I'll start the timer when one of the judges asks a question, and you have 15 minutes.
June, did you want to get started or?
Oh, I see.
Oh, because you unmuted yourself, so I thought you were going to start.
I was just going to be ready. Yes, I do have a question. So thank you for your presentation. I quite enjoyed the layout, structured format, and specifically the KPIs. I would like, however, to know whether or not you could elaborate on how you guys determined the timeline of 3 months for both aspects of your short-term solution. What were your assumptions and underlying drivers to get that turnaround time?
I think I can take this one. Colton, if you go to the appendix, so we look up what's the approximate timeline for a mobile app development, and it's take about roughly 4.5 months. But we see that MTC already have their, the slide before that, but MTC already have their own app, which is why we just try to upgrade it, so we cut the time in half. And that's how we get the 2 months. And then for the bus, since every car have to be having the need of having putting in the new FNC chip, as well as like integrating the whole system into the mobile app. That's why we, in total, we decided to take approximately 3 months.
Just building off what Tom said there, it talks about the app integration and all that taking the approximate 3 months with a team that we put together. And that was actually designed out of a software engineer, 2 software developers, and then a little bit of a project manager, that kind of thing on that team. Building on the other side of it, when you're talking about updating the network solutions, those are things that were laid out in the case. So just kind of have plans in order, processes that would get done, looking into how long those processes actually take. They are a quick upgrade, either immediate within kind of the day, or just have a technician come out, and that was our 3 months. plan to update the 8,000 units that are currently on hand.
I'm not a techie, but aren't there two aspects to the updates? The checking or docking stations, which is 8,000 units, which would 8,000 units, how many units per day does that require if we're going to do it in 3 months? But isn't there also the cards? And I forget how many users we have, but don't we have 1 million users per day? So how do we cover 100% of the user population and updating their cards in a 3-month period?
Well, right now there's only 10% of the users are actually using the Aller technology, and the component of this would be to have the all 10% moving forward to the 15 and so on and so forth of adoption to utilize the app. The card is strictly in place as a system for those who do not wish to have it on their phone or do not have a phone. So the card is kind of a secondary backup source.
Understood. So 10% of the million riders, of which there's an assumption that not 100% of them have a card.
Yes, absolutely. Well, moving forward, you wouldn't want them all to have a card. The theory would be that majority of them would adopt the app itself and utilize the card there.
Okay.
And then if anybody did want to have a card, they would be able to be just submit for that, and a card would be allocated to them.
Understood. That ends my first question. Next.
Cynthia, do you want to go or?
Yeah, sure, I can go. So I did agree with June that the 3 months seems a little bit optimistic. Also because part of the problems, so your focus on the problem statement was very technical. So it was focused on the hardware, software, and network issues. I wanted to ask if you considered anything operational. So they did mention that the employees, and you even included it in your user story, which I really liked. I like that you guys put a user story. It's great to really show the people who are impacted by your solution. But I would have liked to see something like, could you talk maybe about a plan that you might have for employees training, like you're putting in a new system and all, and already the current system they're struggling with. How are you going to prep them for this new system?
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing about this system is it's primarily going to be the same for anything on the front end side of it. Instead of having a physical card that you're using to, insert to whatnot there, it's now a card that's on your phone or an NFC card, and you're just tapping it. So there's this theory that I like say, if you can communicate something within 20 minutes or below 20 minutes in time, an email will suffice. Anything over 20 minutes is a meeting. I think that we've all experienced that with the Zoom world. So that goes in the same of training people in the job force. If something can be communicated like moving forward, they no longer have to insert, they can now just tap their card. That is something that I think would suffice on that. If anybody wished to have additional training, that could be offered through HR departments.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very straightforward solution. And if so, why hadn't they thought about it already? So what are the risks to the solution?
Are you asking to just pop back to the risk and mitigation slide here? Or do you want us to elaborate a little bit further on some of the risks?
I think maybe more on there's a risk to the users, but there must be business risks here, or would be a technology. Maybe there's an operational risk of some sort, or a risk of delay in the app, or could something not work, or what could go wrong?
Absolutely. I think you're always going to see risks anywhere that you kind of look, and there's going to be shortcomings within technology as things continue to advance there. So in reference to this, I would say moving forward, you're going to see issues with people who just aren't huge fans of having a phone on them all the time, or they don't know how to necessarily use the phone. I think it's probably a big risk right there. and it's like, okay, now they don't have money. How are they going to pay for this? And that's on an operation standpoint for the business. Is this a free ride at this point? And that's, I weighed the pros and cons and the cost of benefit here, looking at the adoption of this technology will cost approximately $3.4 million, whereas if they did not implement a solution, they were set to lose $214 million by 2025. And
Okay. I guess if I was to ask a follow-up, it would be, well, why wouldn't they have, if the NFC chip is so superior in the cards, why are they, I don't really understand the technology, to be honest, and I don't know what the status quo is, but why is what's the differentiator between the NFC chip and the existing technology? Why wouldn't they have used the NFC chip in the first place? It's a tough question.
It's a good question.
The NFC chip has some advantage over the chip they are using right now. First of all, NFC is already a proven technology adopted by Google and Apple for their Google Pay and Apple Wallet to do the transaction. NFC chips is reliable because it has up to 100,000 read and write cycle. It doesn't use that much. It doesn't need that much power to operate. And the data transaction through NFC chip is really hard to hack because the data can only be transferred through a short distance, like within 4 centimeters. So it's really hard for the hacker to get into the NFC system and hack the data.
Oh, and I could just add as well. I mean, I think it's a bit of speculation. Obviously, all of us can just sort of estimate why it hasn't been implemented already. But when you think of how big public infrastructure is and the transportation system specifically, it's probably hard to actually envision like how this would be introduced into that entire system. It's such a large scale thing. So it's possible that they had the idea, but as it's a struggle to sometimes even just maintain transportation infrastructure, to go to the next step and to think of implementing this, say like 5 years ago, or even just a little bit before that, might have been a bit of a stretch. So it could be that it was just not something they could do a few years ago, and now is a better opportunity to do it. So
you definitely addressed my question, so thank you.
I have a follow-up question that builds on both Cynthia's and Andrew's. We know that currently MTC vehicle operators are not comfortable with the switch to using smart card payments, meaning that they participate in the overall problem by not giving the appropriate customer service or support to end users. If that currently is an issue with a less sophisticated technology, what do you propose to make sure that the operators are on board and are not further aggravating the situation when the company lets them know that never mind smart cards, we're now going for smartphones and wireless tapping and all that? How do we make sure that that current issue doesn't escalate and grow and become a bigger pain point with this more aggressive solution?
I think the best way of describing this is, I'd sum it up in, business requires adaptation and adoption of new ways in order to succeed. And the second one would be, people are always going to be scared or resistant to change in a way. So moving forward, it's a communication thing, would be my biggest way of alleviating any pain there, or any pushback, would be to open the lines of communication, figure out what these operators who do not feel it is a good solution, why is that to them? Either way, it's going to move forward because that's where the technology has to go, and that's what consumers are wanting. Like with data or digital trends, everything is moving to mobility, data analytics, and that's how businesses are going to prosper in the future. And MTS is still a business. So even though it's a service to the community and these operators are offering a service, there's still a business side to it that needs to be addressed. And I would say that is going to be done through communication between the operators and the organization itself, MTS itself.
And to use a similar question format that Andrew said, that sounds like a simple solution. So what is your opinion as to why management failed to implement a simple solution thus far?
Looking at management and why they decided to do something, it depends on, I guess, what level of management this is coming from. There's obviously going to be a few different levels here. And that being said, if it was just upper tier executive level management that decided to make this change without consulting lower level or general employees, I think that's their first issue there, which would need to be addressed, unless it's just that kind of system. And if that is the kind of system that they operate under, then in all honesty, in the business world, it's just kind of like adopt or adapt or ship out is the best way of describing it, which sounds bad. I don't like to necessarily use it, but that's my most ideal way of answering this question.
Thank you.
I think another thing to mention is it could be a case of urgency too. I mean, now that data analytics is much more sophisticated and that they know what the real grave threat is and how much money they're actually losing, now they see it as we need to do this right now. Whereas previously, I would suggest that maybe they didn't have such a strong hold on, how much revenue they're actually losing by not having a system like this. So now they have a much larger motivation to look to these kinds of solutions and then to accept them. So.
Accept your answer. Thank you.
I see that we only have a minute left, so I'll try to be very quick, sorry. I know that it was mentioned when you received the case that sustainability would be something to consider. Did you guys find a way to integrate it into your solution?
It wasn't directly related or introduced in the case just due to time constraints. But to answer your question, the nice thing about moving with the digital trends and moving things online, you're no longer having as many physical cards that are allocated out. And the same thing goes for physical currency, tickets to get onto these things. That's an environmental impact right there. So for the company itself, for MTS and the transit system, I think that the environmental impact of trash would be the biggest social responsibility that they could uphold.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. And I mean, maybe if we have another 30 seconds, can we go in the economics of what an NFC card reader costs and how did you arrive there?
Yeah,
I apologize,
absolutely.
but I unfortunately have to cut the Q&A portion. So I will now, if we can all join, let me just double check to see if everyone can join their breakout rooms, and I will start the deliberation clock.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Hey guys, so we're just gonna wait for the judges to come back. They should be here soon. Welcome back. So we'll have a 10-minute feedback session. So I'll start the timer whenever one of the judges starts talking.
All right, so I'll just get started. First of all, your presentation was extremely organized. We could tell that you all worked together really well over Zoom, which is quite impressive. Every step of the way, we knew exactly what was going on. Executive summary, you even had the critical insights, which were all great. I think something that we would have liked to see in terms of your solution, because I'm sure you could tell that some of the questions were revolving around why NFC, how is this so much better than the current situation? And I think what you could have done was really highlight the benefits a little bit more about the NFC. So you briefly mentioned that you can add it to your phone. So you could have gone even further. So you could have said, we're completely bypassing this need to, add so much more to the app. You just add it to your phone. The technology is already there, the same way through Google Pay and all that. So something that would be really helpful moving forward for you if you do any other competitions or that kind of thing would be to sort of show like the current situation, your proposed solution, any other potential solutions, and then make a list of the benefits and say, okay, this has this benefit, this has this benefit. So you really show that what you're suggesting, like you've considered all the options, that what you're suggesting really is the best solution given the current situation. So it kind of really hammers in that point about this is definitely providing all the benefits. So don't just describe you can add it to your phone, but what's the good thing about adding it to your phone? You save costs, you integrate with an already existing technology, that kind of thing. But really, really great job. I loved the KPIs and everything, and the critical insights were great.
Yeah, to build on what Cynthia said, it was a great presentation in structure, and you all did a great job contributing and spoke very well. I think, what I was trying to hit home is that when we were talking about integrating this technical solution, what are the material risks? And I don't know if we quite got there. Now, I don't know enough about the technology, to be honest, to really dive into it. But I think that also manifested itself in the economics that you guys were putting out there. If I was an executive level person, I'd be saying, this sounds too good to be true. And, in terms of timeline, in terms of costs, relative to the global system, like you go and ask an executive, this is the biggest problem on his plate. And you're like, hey man, I just need $3 million in 6 months to deal with this. He's going to be like, either you're a Superman, or he's just going to be, he or she's going to be very surprised to hear that is the only resources that are necessary. Mm-hmm. So, and we didn't drill further into that, unfortunately. We didn't have the time, but I would just caution in the future scenarios of include the slippage areas. You really ask yourself the tough questions, like, can we really get this type of, just getting like permits to go out and work on these systems and stuff, shutting things down for a weekend or whatever, that takes, I'm sure, weeks to organize in the context of a transit system. So I would just put yourself into that bureaucratic mess, which, albeit perhaps as young professionals, you haven't yet dealt with. But I can tell you, working on major infrastructure projects, everything takes about 3 times as long as you want it to. And that's when there's tons of money at stake. So just food for thought for the future.
Mm-hmm. So building on both of those feedbacks, my feedback has to do more with storytelling. So again, love the structure, very easy to follow. but remember your audience. And your audience, in this case, is a mix of business and engineering professionals. But in the role that you're playing of consultants who eventually will be pitching to upper management, you don't know who you're going to be pitching to. You could be pitching to the CFO. And if you're lucky, the CFO has an engineering background, or the CEO who might have a marketing background, who knows, but you don't know who you're pitching to. So when you start talking about tech stuff, make sure that you explain it so that anyone in the audience can follow it. And full disclosure, I don't know what NFC technology is. And I had to Google it in the middle of your presentation in order to understand what's going on. If a judge has to Google the term that you're doing, yes, I see, Christina, 5 minutes, I see. Right, if the judge has to Google, either your judge might not know much, which I don't, but that means you've lost me for a second. Right? And so it'd be even better if you put just a small little disclaimer, right, of what it is. That table that Cynthia was talking about would have helped situate me. You actually covered it when you were doing the graphics and you started talking about Apple Wall and all that, and that helped me. But unfortunately, that was the second or third slide. So in the first 2 slides, when you're explaining your solution, I have this question mark that's distracting me. So that's a storytelling thing. Remember your audience. Similarly, remember your audience to Andrew's point. If you are pitching to upper management and basically your solution is, hey, you guys failed to think of a really easy solution, pace yourselves, because I guarantee you execs have big egos, right? And so you might be right, but make sure that you've thought it through, because if you're basically saying you're stupid to think about it, the exec's going to be like, thank you, get out of my office, right? So pace yourselves. However, on the assumption you're not pitching to dumb execs, this ties back to Andrew's point, if that's basically your message, challenge yourselves to think, what could it be that these smart execs were dealing with that I'm not considering? Because either they're idiots and incompetent, and that happens, fair, but not necessarily. So challenge yourselves. And as an extra way to challenge, whenever you're proposing a solution like this, include a contingency plan. Identify the key areas where it might go wrong. So yes, you guys are the dream team. 3 months is enough. You can do whatever. That's why we're hiring you. That's why we're paying the big bucks. It's amazing. However, if something were to go wrong, what would it be? And just show that you've thought it through, because that also adds an element of credibility to your solution. You're not just asking people to blindly trust. You are acknowledging that things can go wrong. They won't, because you guys have the best implementation plan. But if they do, hey, we've already thought about it. Okay, so that from a storytelling also helps. Last thing, Q&A and minor housekeeping. We do not say I in a team presentation. We say we. We never use the word I. We always say we, even if you're the one who prepared the slide. It is a teamwork. We say we. And Q&A, best practice is to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. So if one of the people is noticing that they're speaking too much, a hack can even be, if you feel like your teammates aren't speaking out, you can even say, why don't I let X answer that? I think X is best placed to answer. And that way you make sure in the Q&A that everyone's participating. That further, from a presentation standpoint, shows that it's a team effort and that everyone's collaborating strongly, which is what execs hope from their consulting teams. They want a team effort, because they fail to have teams working properly internally. That's why they're hiring a team. So that's most of my feedback. I don't know if we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I would just circle back and reiterate that it was a really excellent presentation.
Yes.
It was well polished. I think you guys, the story was fantastic. Like the introduction was fantastic. I was very interested. Yeah, for me, just the only missing part was just the technology implementation but you know, it's not easy when you're dealing on Zoom and doing this in 24 hours or however much time you all had. So yeah, it's a pleasure to listen to you all.
Particularly because your structure was so good, even when we flagged what seemed to be like implausible assumptions, like the 3 months, that's not the end of the world, because your structure was so good that, let's say we know 3 months, yeah, no, that's a joke, it's 15. We could just slot that in and still follow your story, right? It didn't kill the presentation. So that is definitely tribute to how strong your structure is. And your KPIs, throwing in KPIs or even thinking about KPIs, that is amazing. Keep on doing that, because effectively, if you have a solution without a KPI, that's probably a bad solution. So that you're even going, before we even ask, that you're saying, no, we thought about this is how it would help, is was a really good part of your solution.
The only thing I would add is that the fact that you guys used upcoming technologies like data analytics to help further improve the transit system and suggest that maybe because of the data they collect, they could see which routes are not quite as busy, which routes need more frequent trips. That's a really great way of adding more than just the technology, but using it to your full advantage. I really like that strategic approach.
Awesome. Appreciate all that. It's very dark in here now.
So that concludes. So the 10 minutes is up. So thank you very much, Volt Consulting, for your presentation, and good luck for the rest of the competition. And we'll see you tomorrow for case number 3.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so judges, is everything okay with inputting your scores within a NovaTank?
I haven't done it yet. Should we send you the best speaker first and then?
Yes, if you can. Do you want me to share my screen again with all of their faces? I believe it was on their PowerPoint.
I already.
Oh, you already know? Okay.
Well, I don't know if the others, but I'm good.
Yeah, me too.
So you can just
already sent it. I didn't put in my marks, but I sent in best.
Okay, and I'm just